As we look ahead to 2023, one of the prime economic indicators to keep an eye on is the housing market. To say it was volatile in 2022 would be a huge understatement. How is it looking in the new year? Bullish, bearish, or a little bit of both? Kennedy Sepulveda has our report.
Well, since 2020 to 2022, November to November, 2 years, we're down 47% in sales. So I think going into 2023, you're going to see a longer day on market on housing.
In recent years, bidding wars for new listings were common between home buyers, many of which offered over the asking price to better their chances.
First-time buyers, they weren't able to buy houses the last few years if they didn't have their money. In the last few years, you had to have your down payment, all your closing costs, plus $10,000 or $15,000 over for your bid.
In 2021, Rachel McBee and her husband Chris were first-time home buyers ready to get out of an apartment. Originally, the plan was to build, but with supply chain issues, the closing date continued to move further and further away.
We almost had to stay with Chris's parents for, it would have been probably a couple months. Yeah. And I love them, and I think they love me. And, you know, it's fun, but it would have been very tight and very horrible, and the cat would not have been happy.
The McBees began their search for a house that would be ready to live in by the time their lease was up. It only took 3 days to find the house, but then they had to win the bidding war.
And there were multiple bids. We loved this house enough that we were willing to pay more. Now, it wasn't a huge amount more than you hear about some places like $20,000, $30,000. It was not that at all, but it was a little bit more than what the house was listed at.
However, a 2023 home buyer didn't have to offer over at all.
I did offer under the list price for the house, and I was surprised. I expected a counter offer. They did not counter except for changing the closing date, which was fine with me. I just was a little surprised.
Sherry's experience buying a home in Oklahoma City was short and easy with the help of websites like Zillow, allowing her to search from a long distance.
I sent several that I saw that I liked. I sent to my son and his wife, and they looked at them. They either said not a good area of town, or the inside is all messed up, or whatever. And so that was helpful to have them kind of screen what I was looking for.
It was a relatively easy experience after a tough couple of months for the Walls family.
We've lived in Kansas for 53 years, and as you know, my husband passed away in November, and I had already been planning to make that move. He's been in ill health for several years, so all of my family, extended and immediate, are in Oklahoma. And since I grew up there, I'm kind of familiar with the state.
While Sherry had an easier experience than the McBees did closing on a house, the McBees got in at a time when mortgage rates were nearly half of what they are now.
Since 1972 to now, the average rate has been 6.5% to 7%. So this is a normal market for someone like me that's been in it 30 years. When I got in it, it was 9%. So I don't think we're going to see the days of the 2% and 3% again. I think that's over with.
During COVID-19, rates dropped to nearly 2.5%. Now, rates are close to 6.5%.
So mortgage rates will follow inflation. If inflation goes up, rates will go up, as we've seen that happen. If inflation comes down, rates will follow. And one mortgage guru that I follow, he thinks we'll see 5% this summer. So I'm hoping he's right. We're kind of heading to recession, and that should bring inflation down. And if that's what happens, then rates will follow.
As mortgage rates fluctuate back to pre-pandemic percentages, the housing price is expected to continue to increase at a rate similar to years past.
Before the 2008 crash, houses increased about 6% a year. And we didn't do that after the crash in 2008. We never went up 6% a year. And so we always went up about 2 or 3% a year because we just had such problems getting going. And then COVID, it's like we caught up with that because we started going up these huge amounts. So I do not think you're going to see that. I think you'll see a normal 3 to 4% increase a year for a while, and you might get 6%, but it will depend on inflation and recession.
The real estate industry also expects the amount of realtors to dwindle in the state.
I think they estimate about 2,000 realtors getting out of the business this year here in Oklahoma City area. So we really had a lot of realtors come in during COVID. And so when it gets to a market, it becomes difficult to sell. When houses stay on the market longer and price reductions have to happen, and we have to figure out special financing because interest rates are up, then it takes a little bit of different skill than just taking an order.
Meaning Oklahomans should do their research when choosing who will assist in one of the largest financial decisions people make. Kennedy Sepulveda, the Oklahoma News Report.